Cats, cops, and C4. Take it from the top soldier. What happened? Admiral Cistern says as Cenk sighs. Very succinct, but I need more details. With the immediate problem solved and enough standard police forces to shove the rest into the backs of transport vehicles to be taken to alternate facilities, the rest of the team had been teleported back to the Dauntless, and Cenk had been allowed to use one of the non-observed side rooms that are meant for prisoners to meet with their lawyers. He'd scanned it with 5 different devices and swept it twice, once normally and the other time with Axiom to check for any bugs. Surprisingly, there weren't any, so he set up his communicator to project his debriefing with the Admiral to him. Corrupt system, sir. The prison is needed, but there's huge abuses of power all over the place. If what we saw today was any indication, then a good number of the staff and likely the warden herself are on the wrong side of the bars. That's not to say that there weren't a lot of maniacs, however. Numerous criminals refused to surrender and were an active threat to myself or the squadron. Living shields were used, as were numerous weapons stolen from the guards. The only thing I could actually recommend to the prison is the fact it has a similar effect to our own personal arsenals, so that when a null collapse occurs, the prison doesn't simply detonate. What about the damage itself? Have you got any hint as to how Warlady Clobo understood the prison enough to cripple so many of its defenses in just a few moves? Well, sir, I learned, and I'm sure you're aware, that the woman in question spent time in the prison before being let out due to it being a mistrial that sent her in there in the first place. Cenk states just before the call splits. Excuse me for interrupting, but seeing as how you're still on the field, I have some important information for you about Miss Clobo, Sir Philip states. Send it to me. I'll review it after this debriefing. And thank you, Sir Philip, Cenk says and receives a genial smile from the proper old man before the call is back to just himself and the Admiral. Now, back to it. Warlady Clobo was once a resident of Warden Hargate's lovely penitentiary. She was, and she apparently got out due to mistrial. This letter hit strategic points that I'm now learning are where the prison's secret weapons were located. Or rather, where Warden Hargate's big threat to everyone in the lower level was. Apparently, the whole prison is to be nulled if anything starts happening in the lower levels. But it was the second thing hit after the outer wall. With that 1-2 punch in place, the biggest deterrents the prison had, being the actual walls and threat of null, were gone. Then there was a massive cyber attack and everything in the prison was screwed with, opening the cells remotely. Not everything is improved by computers, Admiral Cistern notes in an amused tone. True enough. With those 2 facets in place, the whole prison was basically open, and we could only tell the hostile from the non-hostile based on behavior. Most people in uniform were down, but a doctor by the name of Crest was on hand to help out some of the staff. She also gave us a warning that a Dr. Melanie Hart is not only amoral, but a chronic liar. Interesting, Admiral Cistern states. I gave her my contact information and a promise to bring anything she brings to me to either Chief Bowman or, if the chief can't do anything, to you, sir. I see. Now thank you, Philip. Admiral Cistern's image looks to the right as he's handed a folder. We're already looking into her, apparently. Her record triggered a small forest of red flags from our initial scans of the prison staff, as does a fair chunk of the staff, looks to be a full third. Well, after we contained the adepts with null, followed by disruption needles, and then a lot of handcuffs, tape, and zip ties, we sealed their part of the prison to stop casually helping them get the needles out and causing trouble. After that, we continued a sweep and ran into several more high-end prisoners, including a cyborg with a powerful arm she clearly made in the prison, and she was about to murder another prisoner who was clearly far less vicious than her fellows. If it was an act or an off day, I cannot say, but she certainly seems to be in the wrong prison. Red flags are all over this prison, including in the prisoners in multiple directions, Admiral Cistern confirms. I believe it. We had several more encounters, including finding dead officers, before we came to a room with a large number of very passive prisoners. They went back to their cells and there was no sign of damage in the room. Then a guard arrived, screaming threats. She then asked who we are. We returned the question and she immediately became hostile. We warned her about our weapons and she then used a teleport to try and get us from the side with lethal intent. My first assumption was that she was a prisoner that had stolen a uniform, but the prisoners in the room recognized her as a guard. I see. After that? After that, the amount of backup officers hit critical mass and the fighting ended. A bit of talking, a bit of conversation, and now I'm borrowing this room to speak with you. I see. Very good. I'll be corroborating this with the rest of the squad. But if you're being honest, then the only thing I can say is that you should have simply answered her question. However, as she became hostile and tried to attack the blame for the situation, falls solely on the guardwoman. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you for your time. Peruse the information we've gotten for you, and we'll send you more when we have more. Admiral Cistern states, and he receives a salute from Chink. So you've gotten information on our building wrecking War Lady Clobo? What's it say? Vera asks as they get back into Linda's squad car. Things were calm for now, and with the sheer amount of corruption, Chink hadn't wanted to push the mission security more than he already had with the debriefing in the meeting room. I'm curious as well. I've received a good amount of information about her from the prison's own files, but I don't think it'll be complete, Linda says. Yes, I have some information on her here. There's a bit of a pattern for her. She may look and act like a brute, but her tactical movements are nothing short of brilliant. She plays centrist hodgepodge of legal districts against each other, and if this pattern holds true in any aspect, she's going to be someplace beyond our precinct's authority. In other words, she's out of legal reach. No. These spires have extradition treaties with each other to stop that kind of bullshit, Vera states. Yes, but by the time they get sorted out, the evidence or eyewitness accounts become compromised. Every single time. The woman is a brute in a fight, an outright savage for a leader and a grandmaster in covering herself. She's a known criminal, but they haven't been able to stick even tax evasion on her, Chink says, and Linda lets out a low whistle. But that doesn't mean we don't have information on her. The name on her birth certificate is Catherine Glaze, daughter of a baker on the 5th level of Jordan Spire. 5th level? No way that bakery was legit, Vera says as Linda nods. It's matching up with her own information so far. It probably wasn't, we're not sure, but what we are sure of is that it was set on fire when Catherine was a young girl. That's when the girl's first brush with criminal elements begins proper. And as a Horchka, she was stronger than most races and she knew to use it. After that, she seems to go into being the heavy hitter and main thug of a crime boss, the very one suspected of burning down her mother's bakery. Then some 26 years ago, it was revealed that the gangster she had been working under has been dead for years. But Catherine kept acting like she was alive, taking over the organization with a single murder, and she'd still be making money hand over fist there if there wasn't a massive gang war involving multiple endless barrages that leveled a full 10% of that level. She was presumed dead. She appears next on the opposite side of Centris and now has her armor. And it is armor. The file I have here says she had it confiscated when she was in the prison, no problem, and took it right back when technicalities let her walk. Yes, but I can add to that, Linda says. In prison medical records? That's right, she has implants to interface with those arms. Similar to power armor, just only on the arms. Also, the ones she had last time she was in prison are markedly different to the ones she attacked the prison with, and the ones she attacked the station with. So she has an arsenal of the things, Chink notes. Anyways, the woman mostly makes her money off of the traditional protection racket. She's efficient and brutal for rolling up other gangs into her operations, and generally only becomes known in an area after being there for several months. Ah, the classic, give me money or I break you and your things plan, Vera says with a bit of a hiss. Doesn't she at least sell something? Yes, protection. The reason people don't report her is that she usually slams down on whoever was playing that game before and lowers the price while visibly providing protection. Chink says as he brings up an image of a badly beaten woman tied up to a lamppost and being pointedly ignored by the women on the street around them. Damn, she shaved that Lyrac's tail and strung her up with it, Vera says in an impressed tone. So, we have what looks like a thug, an enforcer, but is actually a boss, just without any pretentious appearances, and a skill for violence in getting the locals to shrug and look the other way, Linda notes. That matches up with the prison records. She was registered as getting into a series of brutal fights that she was never seen instigating or throwing the first punch. but it ended fast with her opponents having limbs smashed or utterly savage injuries like gouged out eyes. My report here mentions a necklace of teeth. A bit of an exaggeration. I saw it. It was more of a bracelet, Linda says. Of course, the fact she was able to rip out a chunk of a woman's hair and then braided it with the teeth of her other victims is disturbing. It's also one hell of a statement, Vera says, leaning up, sitting widely as she throws her arm around both Chunk and Linda's chair. It's one thing to beat the shit out of someone, but to then turn around and make a literal trophy out of them? It's harsh, but it's styling, the kind of thing that just hearing about adds a level of danger to her that makes her seem stronger. Right, so the question is, where is Miss Glaze hiding? And why would someone like her, who seems to have a good solid system, risk so much attacking a police station outright for so little of a prize? The thing she likely knew is that the unseen eyes are much closer to legit spies, and they didn't know it was Averill. Only that Miss Big had something to do with it. So what is Miss Big to War Lady Clobo? Beyond worthy of getting some exposure to try and get some kind of leverage over? Her thugs had no idea. The ones we caught even thought attacking the station was stupid, but didn't want to snitch on her. Even when she abandoned them by teleporting out, they were loyal. Linda says before sighing, not that her goons will see it that way, seeing as how she's blown open the prison they were sent to and gave them all a way out. It'll just be seen as being smart and making sure she could get them out. The question is, Cenk begins, who do we prioritize? We could go for Clobo good and hard. She has an MO and that can be traced. We can find her, but she's likely to bargain for her freedom, and if we're noticed in taking her, then Miss Big will likely vanish out of any path that Clobo can offer us. Are you suggesting making a deal with that monster? I don't want to, but the option should at least be thought about. Chunk answers, why not send your sneaks? Bruisers and bosses both need their little list to make sure they get everything. Find that and you'll find a lot. Even if it just leads to another safe house, Vera says, and Cenk turns back to her with a grin. You know what? I think that's exactly what should happen. We need her looking the wrong way as we get someone tiptoeing around in her base, Cenk says as there's clear calculation behind his eyes. And I've got an idea, Vera says with a cackle, and that is, I'm going to need to borrow Cenk and play his headwife for a bit. Why? Linda asks, already guessing and not liking it. Oh no, Cenk says as he figures it out himself.